Welcome back to the Real News Network. I'm Paul Jay in Baltimore, and this is Reality Asserts Itself with our guest, Kostas Lapavitsas, who now joins us in the studio. Thanks for joining us again.
Pleasure to be here.
So, Kostas Lapavitsas is a professor of economics at the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London. He's a member of Research on Money Finance, RMF, and the lead author of RMF's book, Crisis in the Eurozone. His previous publications include Social Foundations of Markets, Money and Credit, and Political Economy of Money and Finance. His most recent book is Profiting Without Producing: How Finance Exploits All of Us. So give us a little background. The Greek communists, and most of them believed the Soviet Union was a socialist country and sort of an example of where one would want to go. But then a lot of communists in Greece and elsewhere, especially after the 1956 revelations by Khrushchev about Stalin and so on, a lot of people got disillusioned, at least about the Soviet Union. Some people got disillusioned about being a communist at all. How did it affect your father?
My father remained a lifelong believer in the Soviet Union being a socialist country. That's what he'd learned when he was a young man. That's what he believed in. He was very suspicious of other approaches to these things. And he didn't really want to get involved in these debates in particular. He also interpreted them in terms of the significance of these discussions for the here and now. And to him, the Communist Party of Greece was the party that would most reliably bring about social transformation. That's what he believed in, and that's what he accepted.
So how about you? As you start to get older and have your own view of the politics?
I never accepted that, no. I've always been like all in a sense, the whole of the Greek left has come out of the womb of the Communist Party. It's not as if very, very few people, some Trotskyists and some others, actually have a different origin, which goes back to the interwar years. But the vast majority of the Greek left, as you see today, in one way or another, has come out of the Communist Party. The Communist Party of Greece, you've got to realize, is the oldest party in Greece. It's the only party that the Greek people have actually established from below, as it were. It's their own party. The only party that you can legitimately call the party of the Greek people, as in Greek working people and Greek peasantry and so on, is the Communist Party of Greece. And they feel it is their own party. It's true. No matter how small its influence might be and how mad some of the policies that the times it advocates and so on, historically there's no doubt at all about it. So, like many others, I was also interested in the Communist Party. I read about it, I followed it and so on, but I never really believed that the Soviet Union is a paradise.
Did you have debates with your father about this?
Yes, of course. Although most of the debates we actually had were about the war years and so on and what it meant. I was very curious. I wanted to learn and I wanted to know what social revolution effectively means in practice. I was very, very curious about that because effectively the 40s in Greece were a decade of social revolution. That's basically was in the context of the war. And I wanted to understand how that worked in practice. And that's what we discussed more than the bigger questions. Is the Soviet Union socialist? Is it not? I mean, I wouldn't discuss that with my father. I would discuss it with others. I didn't really. So, yeah, with my father I discussed those issues. What happened in 1944, what happened in 1945, and so on. And
when, in your teenage years, once the dictatorship falls, you're in the streets?
Oh, very much so. Immediately, I remember the night the dictatorship fell, I remember it like today. I was a little boy, as I said, but to me it was like a major moment that basically showed to me how the world moves. Hundreds of thousands of people, the police cowering in their cars. It's an unbelievable thing, and I was in the midst of it. I just found myself in the midst of it, and then I became sucked into that straight away. Like a lot of others, I wasn't exceptional. There were many, many others.
So as the 60s unfold, I mean, around the world, there's a time.
That's the 70s in Greece.
I'm sorry, the 70s. Yeah, you're young in the 60s, yeah. But the 70s as well. It's a time of national liberation movements,
sure.
The Vietnam War. Where are you in all this?
These things affected Greek youth very, very powerfully because the left suddenly became very influential. It emerged out of the dictatorship in '74 and it captured the youth. The best of the youth at the time really went to the left. And I'm talking about the creme de la creme, you know, in universities and elsewhere, which doesn't happen today. But at the time, the best people went into these left organizations, took part in debate, all these issues, the anti-colonial struggle, what happened in Cuba, what happened in Africa. These things were for us very important questions. We followed them very closely. We debated them all the time. Latin America. This is how I grew up. This is how my entire generation grew up. So for us, these were real issues. I mean, live issues. We felt them in our bones. We debated them seriously because we thought and we expected profound change. We knew that the capitalist system was in deep crisis. We knew that dictatorships were collapsing across the south of Europe. And we thought and hoped that, yes, indeed, now it might be a time of profound change in the direction of socialism. A lot of people believe
I have to say, a lot of the younger people watching probably don't know what you just said, because that there were dictatorships in Spain. There was a dictatorship in Portugal.
Yes.
And as you said, Greece. And most people, I think youngish people, don't know this part of history. You know?
Probably.
But they fell.
Yes, Franco dictatorship in Spain, the Salazar dictatorship in Portugal. These were actually regimes that long predated the Greek dictatorship. They were actually fascist regimes. They outright fascist regimes, and they collapsed at the same time. So this was a period of great promise across the south of Europe, together with all the other events that you mentioned, things happening in Africa, things happening in Latin America, and so on. To us, all that felt like a period of very strong promise of social liberation.
So when do you start to gravitate towards and kind of make the decision that you were going to try to get to the economic roots of all of this?
In that context of debate and activity, it was clear at the time, and for my generation, it was clear that political economy was key. It's very different today because Marxism, political economy, all these other ideas have become something else. They've moved towards politics, towards philosophy, towards ethics, even, and so on. For us, political economy was key. I don't know why quite that was, but we always knew from the very beginning that, or we thought we knew, that political economy is what we need, because economics is what makes capitalism tick, and we need to understand the economy. Many others thought like me at the time, that we really need to understand the economy to understand capitalism, and really, if you really want to become familiar with how capitalism works and understand it, you must understand economics. That's how we approached economics, ideologically, from this perspective. And in fact, funnily enough, the first book I read seriously for economics was Paul Suize's Monopoly Capital. I must have been about 15 at the time. It was precisely the time, I'm telling you, second half of the 70s. And everything made brilliant sense. And I don't necessarily agree now with what you find in Suize's book, but Suize was a brilliant man, and that was a great book. And to me, that's really what convinced me that yes, that's what I want to do. I want to be like that. I want to understand capitalism like this.
And so, what do you do to do that?
Well, first you remain involved in activity, obviously. So I was very active, although I never belonged to a political organization in Greece. Although I was very active and very involved in many types of political activity, but never actually joined any political party. So you remain active, you take part in discussions, and you read. I read very widely. I even read Karl Marx. I didn't actually read the more difficult things of Karl Marx at that time. I was too young, and I'm glad I didn't actually, because I wouldn't. But I read simpler things and so on. So you read widely, you discuss thoroughly, and you debate with your friends. That's what we did. We had endless discussions about what is capitalism, what is socialism, what is working class activity. You know, good old left-wing stuff. And yeah, that's what you do. But all the time, as I say, the focus for me, particularly after reading Suize's stuff, was I must understand the world this way.
So at some point you get, really serious about it. You decide this is going to be my life.
Yes, and I became very serious about it when I was about 16 or so, and I decided to go to England. I thought that if I want to do economics seriously, if I want to pursue it, do it justice, and really do it in the way that it ought to be done, I need to go to where it's taught and researched at a very high level. So it was a choice between the US and in England, and I decided to go to England.
And where'd you go?
I went to the London School of Economics. I did well, the usual exams and everything else while doing the Greek school exams and so on. And I went to England when I was about must have been 17 or so to study.
And
there I followed a different left-wing path.
Which was?
There I realized that the world of the left, I mean, I joined the left there too. By then I didn't discover left-wing politics at university. I was already formed when I went there. And I mean, formed is a strong word, but I was already predisposed that way. And there I realized that the world is far bigger, far broader, far more difficult than I had imagined in Greece when I was in my mid-teens. And
More than good guys and bad guys.
More than good guys and bad guys. Socialism is a far more complex thing. The working class is a far more sophisticated thing than I'd imagined, and that there are all kinds of other left-wing politics, and I'd better sit down and study, and I'd better get around and meet some more people and things, and that's what I did. I joined British politics. So in fact, that's when I became more systematically involved. So in many ways, I've learned politics through the British left as well. I belong to the British left as well.
And when does the whole role of finance become sort of your preoccupation?
Very early on, actually. I started studying political economy seriously at university because that's what I wanted to do. I always wanted to do neoclassical economics, mainstream economics, as seriously as possible. And I did. But I never lost sight of wanting to do things like the stuff in Sweezy that I had read many years back. But I wanted to understand neoclassical economics as well. So after doing
Just to be clear, that means you want to understand all the capitalist theoreticians before you are deconstructing them.
That's it. I wanted to understand the economics that is taught at university as standard economics, not heterodox or different economics. And after doing a couple of years of that, it was time to study Marx and political economy seriously. And when I started studying that seriously, I mean seriously, sitting down and going through it, I picked up an interest in money and finance. I must have been one of the first to do it, because at the time, no Marxists and no political economists were particularly interested in money and finance. Almost none. It was a minority pursuit very much at the time. I don't know why it appealed to me. There must be something in my psyche, in my makeup. But money in particular fascinated me.
Well, it's kind of at the core of the issues that we're all facing.
But at the time it wasn't clear. At the time it wasn't clear to many. It was...
More people were interested in the politics of things.
Also in production, in labor, capital, productivity, these real issues in which Marxism and political economy has always been very strong on. Not money and finance. I was drawn to that from very early days, and I have maintained it for 3 decades.
Okay, and that's what your book is about. And
Yes.
in the next segment of Reality Asserts Itself with Kostas Lapavitsas, we're going to pursue finance and just take a look, first of all, at the history of the rise of finance. Please join us for that on the Real News Network.